In the quiet suburbs of Brightwood, Colorado, there are houses that look perfectly normal from the outside, but some of them hide secrets that refuse to stay buried. This is one of those stories. My name is Ria, and what happened to me at my grandmother's house still haunts me to this day. It started on a cold December evening when my father suddenly fell ill and had to be rushed to a hospital in Denver. Mom went with him, leaving me at Grandma's old two-story house on Maple Lane for 2 weeks while school was closed. Mr. Wilson lives right next door, Mom told me. If you need anything, just ask him. The house felt familiar and comforting at first. The big backyard, the creaky wooden stairs, and the peaceful silence. But very soon, that silence began to feel wrong. On the second morning, while I was making tea in the kitchen, I noticed Mr. Wilson standing at his window, staring straight at me. I smiled and waved politely. He didn't wave back. He just kept staring with empty eyes. Then he slowly closed the curtain. That evening, he was on his balcony again, watching me through binoculars as I sat in the backyard. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I quickly went inside and locked the doors. That night, around 2 a.m., I heard a strange sound, like someone slowly dragging their fingers along the outside wall of the house. It moved from the front to the back, then stopped. I told myself it was just an animal. The next day, I decided to meet Mr. Wilson. I knocked on his door. No answer. As I turned to leave, I saw a little girl, about 10 years old, watching me from the back window. She smiled sweetly and waved. I waved back. "Who are you?" I asked. She didn't say anything. She just smiled, then disappeared into the dark room. When I told Mom on the phone, she said Mr. Wilson was a widower and probably lived with his granddaughter, but something didn't feel right. That night, my phone started turning on by itself while on the charger. No notifications, just the screen lighting up again and again. Then I heard slow breathing right outside my bedroom door. When I opened it, no one was there. The following morning, I entered Mr. Wilson's house. The front door was slightly open. Inside, the walls were covered with old photographs. In almost every picture, Mr. Wilson was standing with the same little girl. Under one photo it said, "Emily, 2018. I asked the old lady across the street about them. "Mr. Wilson lives completely alone, dear," she replied. "His granddaughter Emily died 6 years ago in a car accident. He never recovered. He doesn't talk to anyone anymore." My blood ran cold. That night, the real terror began. At 1:45 a.m., I woke up feeling like someone was standing right beside my bed. When I opened my eyes, the room was empty, but on the floor were small, wet footprints leading from the door to my bed. I tried calling my mom, but there was no signal. The house felt alive now. I could hear soft footsteps running through the halls and faint giggling. "Ria, come play with me." The voice was sweet, childlike, and close. I hid in the closet, but the voice came from inside with me. "I'm here." I ran downstairs. No matter which room I entered, Emily appeared. Under the bed, in the mirror, at the top of the stairs, always smiling. Then Mr. Wilson's voice echoed through the walls, cold and hollow. "She will keep you now, just like she kept your grandmother." I tried desperately to open the front door, but it wouldn't move. The windows were sealed shut. Emily finally appeared right in front of me. Her once innocent eyes were now completely black. "My grandpa doesn't like me being alone," she whispered. "Now you will stay with me forever. We can play every night." I screamed and ran upstairs to Grandma's room. In her old diary, the final entry read, "Emily finds girls who are left home alone. She makes them her friends. She never lets them leave." A freezing hand touched my shoulder from behind. Emily leaned close and whispered softly into my ear, "You are not alone anymore, Ria." But the worst part is, even after I somehow escaped that house the next morning when my parents returned early, I still hear her. Every night when I am home alone, I hear small footsteps. I hear a little girl whispering my name. And sometimes, when I look out the window, I see Mr. Wilson standing there, watching, waiting, because some neighbors never really live alone, and some houses never let their guests leave. What if the scariest thing about being home alone is not what hides in the dark, but what has been waiting for you to be alone? This is the true inspired story of 17-year-old Ethan Carter. What happened to him over 4 cold winter nights in an old Victorian house still terrifies everyone who hears it. It was December 2023. Ethan's parents had to rush to Seattle because his grandfather had a major stroke. They left Ethan alone in their large old house on Elm Street in the small town of Ravenwood, Oregon. Only 4 days, his father said. The security system is on. New cameras are installed. Do not open the door for anyone. We will be back before Christmas. Ethan was excited. For the first time, he was old enough to stay home alone. The first night was perfect. He ordered Chinese food, played video games until late, and fell asleep on the couch with all the lights on. But on the second night, everything changed. At exactly 3:07 in the morning, Ethan woke up suddenly. He heard slow footsteps upstairs, right above his room, in his parents' bedroom. He checked the security app on his phone. All cameras showed nothing. The system said the house was completely secure. He told himself it was just the old house settling. Victorian houses often make noises. He went back to sleep. The next morning, he noticed something strange. The family photo on the mantel had changed. In last summer's picture of Ethan and his parents, there was now a 4th person standing behind them. A tall man in a dark suit. His face was slightly blurred. Ethan clearly remembered that no one else was in that photo. He took it down and hid it in a drawer. That evening, as snow started falling, Ethan saw a tall man standing across the street under the streetlight. The man was wearing a long, dark coat and staring directly at the house. When Ethan stepped onto the porch, the man vanished into the shadows. On the 3rd night, the fear became real. At 3:07 a.m. again, the footsteps returned. This time they were louder. They moved from room to room upstairs. Drawers opened and closed. Then the old piano in the living room began playing by itself. It played a slow, haunting melody that Ethan's grandmother used to play years ago. Ethan grabbed a kitchen knife and hid inside the pantry. The piano played for nearly 10 minutes, then stopped. The house became silent again. At sunrise, he checked the security cameras. They had recorded nothing. But when he went upstairs, he found large, wet footprints on the carpet. The footprints started from his parents' bedroom and ended right outside his own room. He tried to call his parents, but the snowstorm had cut off all phone service. He was completely isolated. On the 4th night, Christmas Eve, Ethan decided to stay awake. He kept every light on and the television loud. At 2:50 a.m., the power flickered twice and the entire house went dark. The security system beeped and shut down. In the complete darkness, Ethan heard the front door slowly creak open. Heavy, wet footsteps entered the house and walked straight toward the living room. A deep, calm voice called out, "Ethan, I have been waiting for you to be alone." Ethan pressed himself into the corner. The voice sounded strangely familiar. "Dad," he whispered. The voice laughed softly. "No, I have been here much longer than your family. My name is Elias Crow. I built this house in 1912. When I returned from a trip one winter, my wife and children were gone. The house kept me here. Now it wants a new guest." Ethan ran upstairs. The man followed slowly. Every door Ethan tried to close opened again on its own. In his bedroom, he found old newspaper articles lying on the bed. They reported the mysterious disappearances of several teenage boys in Ravenwood over the past century. All of them had been left home alone during winter. The most recent article was from 2022 about a boy named Marcus who vanished from this exact house. "You are not the first," Elias whispered from the doorway, "and you will not be the last. The house gets lonely. It collects those who are left behind." Ethan locked himself in the bathroom. He could hear Elias moving through every room, calling his name in different voices, sometimes his mother, sometimes his father, sometimes a child. At 5:30 a.m., the power suddenly returned. Ethan heard car doors outside. His parents had driven through the night and come back early. He ran downstairs and hugged them tightly. When they asked why he was so scared, Ethan looked back at the house. Elias was standing in the upstairs window, watching them with a calm smile. He slowly raised his hand and waved. Ethan's parents never fully believed his story. They sold the house 2 months later. A new family with a teenage son moved in just before the next winter. Ethan still cannot stay home alone. Every night at 3:07 a.m., he wakes up hearing piano music and slow footsteps. Sometimes his phone rings from an unknown number. When he answers, the same calm voice says, The house is still waiting for you, Ethan. It is lonely. If you ever have to stay home alone in an old house, remember this story. Some houses do not like new owners. They already have guests, and they are always looking for one more. The house on Elm Street is still there. If you are ever in Ravenwood, you can drive past it, but do not stop. And never ever go inside alone, because once the house chooses you, it decides when you leave, and sometimes it never lets you go.
In the quiet town of Evergreen, Colorado, nestled against the snow-covered Rocky Mountains, stood a two-story colonial house at 47 Pine Hollow Lane. It looked like every other perfect suburban home: white picket fence, large backyard, and a big oak tree that shaded the porch in summer. But the families who lived there never stayed long. My name is Alex Harper. I was 13 years old the winter my parents left me home alone for 3 days. It was supposed to be a simple trip. My aunt in Chicago had fallen seriously ill, and my parents booked the last flight out on December 23rd. They promised they would be back by Christmas morning. "Lock every door, Alex," Mom said, hugging me tightly at the airport. "The security system is armed. We've set it to notify our phones if anything moves. Don't open the door for anyone, not even if they say they're police. Call us if you feel scared." Dad ruffled my hair. "You're a big kid now. Order pizza, play your games, and enjoy the freedom. Just stay safe." I waved goodbye as they disappeared through security. Deep down, I was excited. 3 days with no rules. I could eat junk food, stay up late, and binge-watch horror movies without anyone telling me to go to bed. The first night was perfect. I ordered a large pepperoni pizza and played video games until 2 a.m. The house was quiet except for the hum of the heater and the occasional creak of old wood. Normal sounds for a 70-year-old home. Around 3:15 a.m., I heard the first knock. It was soft but clear. 3 knocks on the front door. I paused my game and listened. The security app on my phone showed no motion at the front. No one on the camera. Just falling snow and darkness. I shrugged it off as wind rattling the door and went back to playing. But 10 minutes later, the knocking came again, this time from the kitchen window. I walked to the kitchen, heart beating a little faster. I pulled back the curtain. Nothing. Only my reflection staring back at me, eyes wide in the glass. I checked all the locks again and turned on every light in the downstairs area. The security system still said everything was normal. I told myself it was just my imagination and went upstairs to bed. The next morning, December 24th, everything seemed fine. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the snow outside sparkled. I made myself pancakes and spent the day watching movies. But as evening approached, a strange feeling settled over me, like someone was watching. That night, at exactly 3:15 a.m. again, the knocking returned. This time it was louder, more insistent. Front door, then side door, then the backsliding glass door. It moved around the house in a circle. I grabbed my baseball bat from the closet and sat on the couch in the living room, lights blazing. My phone was in my hand, ready to call my parents. But what would I tell them? That someone was knocking, but the cameras showed nothing? They would think I was scared of the dark. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text read, "Are you home alone, Alex?" My blood ran cold. I didn't reply. I blocked the number immediately. Seconds later, another text from a different number. "I can see you right now." I spun around, looking at every window. The curtains were drawn. How could anyone see me? I ran upstairs to my parents' bedroom, locked the door, and pushed a chair against it. I stayed awake until dawn, bat in my hands. When morning came, I checked the security footage. All cameras showed nothing but empty snow and darkness. No person, no movement. The system logs were clean. Christmas Eve arrived. I tried to keep myself busy. I baked cookies using Mom's recipe, played loud music, and called my best friend for a video chat. But as soon as the sun went down, the feeling returned, heavier this time. At 11 p.m., the power flickered, once, twice, then it stabilized. I told myself it was the snowstorm outside, but then the lights in the basement turned on by themselves. I never went to the basement. It was always locked. I heard footsteps. Small, light footsteps coming up the basement stairs. They stopped at the top. Then a child's voice, soft, innocent, and very close, whispered from the other side of the basement door. "Why won't you play with me, Alex? I've been waiting for so long." I screamed and ran back upstairs. I locked myself in my room and hid under the blankets. The voice didn't follow, but I could hear faint giggling throughout the night, moving from room to room. On Christmas morning, my parents' flight was delayed by the storm. They texted they would arrive late that night. I was relieved. Just a few more hours. I spent the entire day outside in the snow, building a snowman, trying to stay away from the house. When I came back inside to warm up, something was wrong. All the family photos on the wall had changed. In every picture, there was an extra child standing next to me. A boy about my age with pale skin and dark eyes. He wasn't smiling. He was staring directly at the camera, at me. I took every photo down and hid them in a drawer. That's when I noticed the handwriting on my bedroom wall, written in what looked like crayon. I live here too now. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone to call my parents, but there was no signal. The storm had knocked out the cell tower. Night fell quickly. At 3:15 a.m., the house came alive. Doors opened and closed by themselves. The TV turned on in the living room, playing old home videos of my family. But in the videos, the extra boy was there too, sitting beside me on the couch. I had no memory of him. I ran to the front door, but it wouldn't open. The locks were jammed. The windows wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The child's voice spoke again, this time from right behind me. "You left me here all alone for years, Alex. Now it's your turn to stay with me." I ran to the front door, but it wouldn't open. The locks were jammed. The windows wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The child's voice spoke again, this time from right behind me. "You left me here all alone for years, Alex. Now it's your turn to stay with me." I turned around slowly. There he was, standing in the hallway. A boy who looked exactly like me, but his eyes were completely black. He smiled, revealing teeth that were too sharp. "I was the boy who lived here before you," he whispered. "My parents left me home alone one winter night in 1997. I waited and waited, but they never came back. The house kept me. Now it wants you too." I swung the baseball bat at him, but it passed through his body like smoke. He laughed, a sound that echoed through every room. For the next several hours, he chased me through the house. Not fast, not violent, just slow, patient, always appearing where I least expected, in mirrors, behind doors, under the bed. His voice never stopped talking. He told me stories about the other families who had lived here, how each child eventually stayed behind, how the house collected them, how it fed on loneliness. At one point I hid in the attic. I found old newspaper clippings there, real stories. A boy named Daniel who disappeared from this exact address in 1997. His parents said he was home alone when they returned from a trip. The house was empty. No signs of forced entry. He was never found. There were more disappearances over the years. Always a child left alone for a few days. Always the same house. The boy, Daniel, appeared in the attic with me. "It's almost time," he said softly. "When your parents come back, they won't find you. Just like my parents didn't find me. You'll stay here with me forever. We can play every night." I was exhausted, terrified, and crying. I begged him to let me go. He tilted his head. "But you already belong to the house now. Can't you feel it? The walls are happy. They have a new friend." Just before sunrise on December 26th, the front door finally opened. My parents' car pulled into the driveway. I heard their voices calling my name. I ran downstairs as fast as I could. Daniel stood at the bottom of the stairs blocking the way. "If you leave," he said, "I'll be alone again. Please don't leave me." For one second, I felt sorry for him. But survival won. I ran straight through him and burst out the front door into my parents' arms. They hugged me tight. I was sobbing uncontrollably. When they asked what was wrong, I looked back at the house. Daniel was standing in my bedroom window watching us. He raised one hand slowly and waved. His mouth moved. I could read the words. "See you next time, Alex, when you're home alone again." My parents thought I had a nightmare. They never believed the full story. We moved out 2 months later. The house at 47 Pine Hollow Lane was sold again to another family with young children. I still have nightmares. Every Christmas around 3:15 a.m. I wake up to the sound of knocking. Even though I now live in another state, in a new apartment with no basement and no history. Sometimes, when I'm home alone, I hear small footsteps. A child's voice calls my name from another room. And deep down, I know the house is still waiting. It remembers every child it has ever kept. If you ever have to leave your child home alone, even for one night, don't do it in an old house, especially not one that feels too quiet. Because some houses don't like being empty, and they always find a way to fill the silence.